On this episode of AV Week, AVIXA says retail's not dead. In fact, it has a lot of potential for ProAV integrators, looking at everything as a service and future-proofing your next AV design. All that and more, next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 350, recorded Friday, May 11th, 2018, as a service.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Extron Electronics and by Biamp.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss that very thing, the news and information. First and foremost, his name is Brad Grimes, and he works for a small little organization called AVIXA. How are you, sir?
Good, Tim. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. Also with us, due north of me in Peoria, Illinois, from IAS, his name is Jeremy Caldera. Welcome, sir.
Welcome to me, too, and to Mike, and to everyone.
Well, yes, and the last person is Mike Shen from Varex out east. How are you, brother?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me again, Tim.
And just so it's been said, I said this before we got on the air, I'll say it now. I'm feeling very follically challenged. If you're not watching the video, all three of these gentlemen have facial hair, and I, at 43 years old, still can't get a whisker anywhere on my face.
Tim. You could try.
I can try, but, I don't know. Rogaine, do they make Rogaine for your face? I don't know. Anyhow, here we go. First and foremost, the first story up is actually from our website. It was a nice press release from AVIXA, a brand new report saying that the ProAV is thriving in the retail environment, quote unquote. Contrary to popular belief, retail is healthy, reaching approximately $5.1 trillion in revenue in 2017 and growing 4% annually for the past 8 years. Brad, I want to start with you on this because, first of all, it's y'all's report. About a year and about 6 months ago, 6 or 7 months ago, back in September, when you switched from Infocom to AVIXA, literally that week, you hired a new hire, Sean Wargo, your director of research and surveys. You guys have been doing a lot more of these, it feels like, at least, and I haven't done a qualitative or quantitative analysis between last year and this year. It feels like you're doing more of these surveys, more of these reports. In addition, you're reaching out more to other organizations. We've talked about that a couple of times on this show. But this one in particular was very interesting in tying in the opportunities that the ProAV community has in retail specifically. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what the driving force was in looking at retail specifically?
Yeah, so Sean Wargo, as you noted, is our new Senior Director of Market Intelligence. And, he was brought in to really overhaul everything we do research-wise because the board handed down at the beginning of the strategic plan a strategic initiative to really, beef up our market intelligence offerings. And we had a huge study come out last year, which was a big sort of market sizing study. But what we never really been able to do was study the pull through. So we're able to study the supply side, but we haven't really studied the demand side, and really trying to understand what the markets that our members work in, what they're looking for, how they approach technology decisions, what types of solutions they're looking for. So this retail report, it's the, what was it called? It's MORE. It stands for the Market Opportunity Analysis Report. It's the first in this series, basically. There'll be retail, there'll be corporate, there'll be hospitality, and a few others this year. And what Sean's team is doing is they're going all the way to the end customer. So this research report starts from trying to understand what actual shoppers, if you will, are looking for in their retail experiences. And to be clear, when we say retail is still thriving, it's total retail. It's Amazon, it's everything else. And I don't think anybody would disagree that people continue to buy things. The aspect of retail that is frequently cited as struggling is the brick and mortar, with malls closing down and whatnot. Now, only 10% of retail is really going through the online place channel anyway. So there remains an opportunity to create, retail experiences, if you will, where more and more retailers are using audiovisual technology to create destinations, to give people a reason to get off their couches, get away from their keyboards, and go into stores. And it's not just to shop. I mean, there are these, you can go into a Nike store now and you can actually pretend you're on a basketball court in a different city or something like that, and it's all done through AV. So there are good opportunities there. What the study found was that, and this is through surveying, our members, our channel, is that, maybe half of the integrators were really involved. I mean, really involved in the retail channel and considered it one of their key markets. So there's an opportunity there if we can illuminate for our membership the opportunities and the ways that retailers approach these technology decisions. So we'll see that in a lot of different verticals through these reports.
And Jeremy, talking about that, Brad mentioned the fact that only half of the VIXA membership was involved in retail. When you're looking at jobs like this, how do you get in there? I mean, I've asked this question 1,000 times, I think, on this program. How do you get into a specific vertical? This is another one where they're talking about well over $1 trillion. If 10% is only online, then you still have hundreds of billions of dollars available, obviously in raw dollars. But getting in there and getting either ingratiated with the property owners or maybe the architect, what have you found is the kind of the best way of getting into big projects like this?
Well, for us, I've told my sales team, I want you guys to focus on the smaller mom and pop shops, right? I mean, with the cost of technology coming down, people can afford this kind of stuff more. I mean, when you're talking digital signage or anything with retailing, a lot of it comes down to content creation. We've talked about that before, and we've been successful so far in partnering with some local content creation type companies, web development companies that are more getting into this kind of stuff. And those mom and pop shops, those are really easy to walk into. You can cold call them, you can do whatever you want to do, and you'll get to the right people, right? I mean, it's not the best way to sell, everybody says, but it works. It's really hard for companies like us, because we're not the large, $100 million integration companies that have these key strategic partnerships. We can't get into those large franchise opportunities, the McDonald's, whatever, choose your store, right? Walmart, whatever it is. They're going to have their own teams, their own people that are all, have already developed all this stuff and they have it down to an art. What we can do is we can just find those smaller regional type places and just, knock on the door, right? I mean, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and we've focused a little bit of marketing on our side on the retail end of that, and it's as simple as handing out some pamphlets, or just making network connections at local chamber events or whatever it is. But that's for us. I mean, like you said, a lot of those businesses are small businesses, so that's the best way to get in.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Shen, from either, I'm not going to say across the pond, but taking a report like this, which obviously is focusing on the U.S., how do you guys take from a Veric standpoint? You guys are global, and in fact, this is kind of what you do, is you handle some of the global accounts. Taking what a client or a customer, in New Jersey, maybe they have a store and they want to open one somewhere else. How do you guys kind of take that footprint and that design and paste it into a foreign or a non-U.S. based location?
So as we know, in Europe and all of EMEA, as well as the Asia Pacific regions, there are different standards for audiovisual installations. What we have seen is if a company is based, if a retail space is based in the New Jersey region, the New York region, for example, and they want to open up in, say, Munich, Germany, most of the time they want complete consistency across the board. And most of the time, the people that will be managing any of the technology in that location is going to be based in the headquarters. So we do keep to a U.S. standard with our implementations in that regard. However, there are times when you run into the request by the local office to use their local tendencies or preferences for design, in which case we just try and do our best. And this is where our professional services come in, and our value add to merge the original design into what the local technology requirements are.
How do you have that conversation? Is that something where you let the corporate headquarters lead, because it's their folks who are having that internal conversation and that internal debate? Let's be frank, and you just kind of step back and say, okay, y'all, you guys kind of decide what to do, and then we'll implement it from there. Or do you take part in that conversation in any way, shape, or form?
No, if anything, we lead that conversation.
Okay.
And we try and not dictate in any way, shape, or form what we think is the best solution, but instead kind of manage the conversation amongst the different parties in the different offices to make sure that the functionality is going to remain the same, and understand what perspective all parties are coming from as to why there would be a specific brand change for the same functionality. 9 times out of 10, it ends up with whoever originated the request, and wherever the headquarters is, that's the standard we end up following, which is great news for us, because at least it's something we already know that we've deployed successfully, that we can support remotely. But it also allows us the opportunity to learn about a lot of the strategic growth of that organization, and really helps to build our pipeline.
All right, very good. All right, guys, our next story comes to us from AV Interactive with AV Magazine, but avnteractive.com is their website. Microsoft is launching, Microsoft partner JSRT is launching what they're calling a mixed reality as a service. What they're doing is they're providing the Microsoft HoloLens, as well as access to a number of different software packages as a service for their clients. Read a quote here, quote unquote, users will be able to include additional subscription to apps and software from Visor, Asoria, Console 3D, Diota, HoloForge, Immersion, Nomadic, Plane Concepts, Synergize, Tactile, and Theoris. Jeremy, I want to start with you on this. The headline is what caught me, the mixed reality as a service. And the first thought I had, and the first question I had, I actually want to lead with, what can't be as a service at this stage of the game? We've mentioned software as a service for years. The term AV as a service has been out there for a number of years, and there have been a number of really smart people kind of saying this is the way you need to go as an integrator. But what can't be a service at this stage of the game?
I don't know that there is anything that can't be a service, right? I mean, you can ideally package up anything and throw a managed service offering with it, or a service plan, or whatever you want to do to kind of just blend it. To me, I always said that the whole as a service model for AV was just glorified rebranding of leasing, right? I mean, to the extent it is almost like that, and if you think of it from that terms, I mean, realistically, if you're just doing that and then you're bundling a service package of some kind, whether that's remote managed services or whatever, you could, in theory, do anything as a service. This whole mixed reality as a service, I mean, I found the AV as a service thing has been very challenging for a lot of my clients, because most of them say, oh, that's a great idea, but we're just going to put that under capital funds, right? And so, and I kind of understand where they're coming from when they explain it to me, because we're talking about stuff that, is integral to a room, when it's wiring through walls, it's conduit, it's all this other stuff that has to go together. Something like this mixed reality as a service makes a little bit more sense to me, selling that as a service, because, I mean, that technology, even though our technology does progress, that's going to progress even faster. So you're going to want to get those upgrades. You're going to want to get that, additional stuff that we talk about in the AV world, but, it's harder to implement.
Mike, you're sitting here shaking your head as Jeremy's talking about, it's difficult sometimes for clients to kind of wrap their head around AV as a service. Are you still fighting that?
Oh, absolutely. Getting clients to understand AV as a service is a big challenge. The idea of purchasing I'm just picking numbers, but a $100,000 system and paying for it over the course of 5 years with a lease to buy option at the end, is not something that most corporate organizations, at least, are interested in really talking about, because that means OpEx spend. That means annual costs that they need to keep in line, and they need to drive the revenue in order to fund that on an annual basis, which is unpredictable. Whereas with capital expenditures, they know that they have the money from profits from years past to be able to make that kind of reinvestment in their organization. So it's a whole lot easier for them to just take a whole system and do it as a capex. However, AV as a service in general, is growing, and our offerings are growing. But a lot of it's related to labor and support, not necessarily towards hardware purchasing.
Okay. All right. Brian, I want to bring you in as we wrapped up this subject, not only just from an Avixa standpoint, but also, not for nothing, but Brad's been a longtime industry editor and reporter. When we started talking about this, and this has been over 10 years ago that we started talking about AV as a service. Have you heard what Jeremy and Michael have been saying from the integrator standpoint? Or are you hearing more that folks are still making, doing this, successfully?
No, I echo what Jeremy and Michael say. I mean, we're at the beginning, really, of being able to package, market, and make understandable AV as a service. There's a lot of opportunity there, and it's being successfully executed in the IT, market, and they're just a lot further along. AV as a enterprise technology is comparatively new to a lot of these decision makers. It's not something that they always had their radar. It was a nice to have rather than, UCC has only recently, relatively recently, become a mission critical enterprise system. So those types of solutions are really just hitting the radar of, CIO staffs or technology management staff or enterprise decision making staff. So it'll take a little time, but there's a lot of opportunity there. And I don't think that any AV company should necessarily give up on it at any time soon. That fine tune their offerings, figuring out what their customers would be willing to purchase on a service basis, and continue to try to get that message out.
All right, very good.
If I can, Tim,
yeah.
Just one more comment. In the IT space, Brad, as you just brought up, a lot of those, IT as a service, hardware purchases that are coming out of the OpEx spend is really driven by the manufacturer. It's not so much driven by the distributor or the person that you're buying the equipment through. Whereas in our industry, we're not seeing that the manufacturers are really offering that in the first place, other than perhaps a particular video conferencing company. But again, they're driving that, they're funding that. So the burden on the integrator and the distributor is much more limited. I think that's part of the gap as to why in IT we see so much more of this than with general AV.
Well, real quickly, Mike, is that video conferencing manufacturer, are they driving it directly to the client, or are they driving it through the integrator?
Yes.
Okay.
So it depends. Most of the time it is directly to the end user and to the client, but there are times where they will partner with an integrator in order to make that happen.
Where at in the sales process? I guess that's where I'm asking is, where at in the sales process do they bring you in? Do they lead with you? Like you are with them at the tip of this? Okay.
No. The client will refer to us as their preferred partner for AV, and that's how we end up in that conversation with said manufacturer.
Okay. All right. Very good. Last story here comes from our buddies over at Commercial Integrator. Meyer Sound helped out a Philharmonic in Cologne, Germany, using the Leopard line arrays to quote unquote future-proof diverse bookings at that concert hall. Mr. Shin, we'll start with you on this. Simple question. In this day and age, and Jeremy mentioned this when it comes to our technology, how it's constantly changing and evolving, how do you future-proof a design?
No such thing.
Okay.
There is absolutely no such thing. I've been hearing the term future-proof since 1366 by 768. And
Wow.
what is the current resolution? No, you know what? I'm going to take it back one more. 1024 by 768. So how do you future-proof innovation? How do you future-proof new technology? 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I started in this industry, we were at a very base level that we thought was an extremely high capability for DSP, for displays. And over time, we have seen the development and the growth of AVB, of Dante, of 4K displays. How do you future-proof against something like that?
Yeah. Brad, when Mike made mention of 4K, I'll ask the same thing is how do you future proof? But in this day and age, when a couple of years ago, folks started, I remember the first Sony display, Sony projector in 4K. A couple of manufacturers were using it at an Infocom training that I had probably 3 or 4 years ago now. And, we had seen 8K displays at a couple of trade shows here in the last 6 months. I'm not kidding. Sharp is already showing them. So how do you future-proof, or can you?
Well, this will be very short too. Just like Mike said, you can't. I mean, that's, and I don't. And if the editor or the person who spoke the words, were challenged to it, it's not really what they mean. To me, what's interesting about this story is a venue is totally pumping up their in-house audio system, which we hear a lot more of. Is venues, especially for concerts and things like that. A lot of touring companies bring their own stuff, and a lot of venues are, trying to be more rider friendly. They're trying to have far more robust in-house audio systems that, a variety of live acts or conferences or anything can plug into and have the most optimal audio experience. That's sort of what I took from this. But yeah, I think Mike's exactly right. I mean, it's not something you can really do, and we can't see, 3 years down the road, much less, way into the future.
No. Actually, Jeremy, I wanted to end with you on this because what Brad just said about being the rider friendly. Jeremy helped a local institution there kind of do that very thing there in Peoria, where there are acts that come there and they specifically go there without a whole lot of gear. So how do you help a venue, like Brad said, become rider friendly?
Well, I mean, everybody's riders are all over the board, but if you can
But
find
just in general.
That's for sure.
you find that commonality, right? It can be done. I mean, the whole future proofing thing is kind of a joke, especially, and I mean, no offense to anybody in the article, but we're talking about speakers, right? I mean, speaker technology is changed, but not changed that much, right? I mean, not like display technology. Now, maybe the transmission method that we get the, signal from point A to point B, like Mike talked about, when we've got AVB, we've got Dante, we've got all the stuff that we've seen in progression, but still, how do you future-proof that? You don't, right? As long as your systems are capable of producing X amount of dB and got this certain frequency spectrum on the audio side and the right mixing console to accommodate inputs and outputs, you can be you can be generalized and rider friendly. I think all that stuff's kind of negotiable from that standpoint. I mean, I don't do too much live stuff, so we're not that, familiar with dealing with that. But I mean, as far as like the permanent install systems, I don't think it's that difficult. It's finding the venues that will make that investment. That's the challenge, right? Because they still just rely on those touring companies to bring that stuff in.
Yeah, absolutely. And they just have a base system and then the input availability to kind of jack in. Yeah. All right. All right, guys, that'll kind of do it. Mr. Grimes, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
How do people find you or Avixa or the Infocom show, which comes up in just a few weeks?
Oh my God. Well, if you're not following Infocom on Twitter, it's at Infocom. That's where all the updates on the show, and the show's 3 weeks away. So it's coming up in a hurry. We look forward to seeing everybody there. I'm at bgrimesdc on Twitter, and Avixa.
Yes, that's your handle.
Sometimes I have to remind myself what I am on Twitter.
All right. Mr. Caldera, thank you, sir.
No problem. Glad to be here.
And how do people find you or IAS?
IAStechnology.net, or my Twitter is at Jeremy_Caldera.
All right. Very good. And last but not least, Mr. Shin, thank you, sir, as always.
Mr. Albright, thank you for having me.
And how do people find you or Varex?
On Twitter at AXPMike, that's AXPMIKE, and of course at Varix.com.
All right, very good. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. A couple programming notes. This Thursday, so we're posting this on Monday, Thursday, the 17th, Mr. Caldera, actually, and Mr. Josh Srago and my buddy Eric Snyder from CTI will be joining me for a webinar, probably I think our second webinar. And what we're doing is going over all of the various AV over IP technologies. Yes, I said all of them, kind of going through them and kind of giving you a primer before you hit the InfoComm show floor, because you're going to be seeing all of them, and a lot of them will be demonstrating both their wares and others. So kind of giving you a breakdown of what each of them are doing, both from a spec standpoint as well as a performance standpoint. So that comes your way, 1 o'clock Eastern on Thursday, May 17th. Also, we mentioned the InfoComm show. We'll be going to that as well, and we will be hosting our 5th annual AVNation AV Tweet Up on Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. In our studio room, N as in Nancy 217. InfoComm and Avix have been nice enough to give us a room for that. So N217, if you can come by, free food and drink, brought to you by Starin. Just come in, trade business cards with folks, and go on your way. We call it a walkthrough event for a reason. So we understand that you have places to go during the week of InfoComm. So just come through, grab a drink, and say hey to folks if you would, please. Also, as you're on our website, go by our underwriter section. These are the folks that help us bring you InfoComm coverage as well as AVWeek. So all that and more at AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. It's all the time we have for AV Week.